In today's video, I'm going to be doing a tier list of every single attacker in Rainbow Six Siege all the way up to the new season, Operation Twin Shells. We've now had a full season with the new recruits, so it'll be interesting where they rank. There's also been a few nerfs to the likes of Dokkaebi and a few buffs to the likes of Nook. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. If you guys agree or disagree at any point, let me know down in the comments. But starting off with Ace, I think he deserves S tier. Now, in my opinion, Ace is arguably the best hard breacher in the game. Hard breach is one of the most crucial roles. And then on top of that, he also has one of the best loadouts in the game as well with the AK-12. Now, I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible. So we're going to move straight on to Amaru, and I'm going to put her straight into the top end of C tier. Now, the reason she is this low is because she is very high risk, high reward. And if you can get it off, it's great. She can individually win you a round. But on a majority basis, she's not that great, and there is a lot better operators you can be picking other than an Amaru. Next up then, we have Ash, and Ash is easily an A tier operator, and you know what? If you wanted to put her in S tier, I wouldn't blame you. She's definitely up there. She's always been a fan favorite in the community, and she's always been one of the best attackers to run. Next up then, we have Blackbeard, who everyone knows is going straight into D tier. I'm really excited to see what Ubisoft do with the Blackbeard rework next season. I have a feeling they're going to overhaul him so much that he's not even going to be recognizable, which I don't know if I'm upset about or excited for. We'll just have to wait and see. But Blackbeard at the moment, and for many years now, has always been a D tier operator. Now after Blackbeard, we have Blitz, who's obviously a shield operator. They got that shield rework earlier this year, I believe. If not, it was towards the end of last year. And I really like how it worked out. I think all the shield operators in the game now are just a lot healthier for the game. And to be honest, I think Blitz, and while we're on the topic of him, Monty, who isn't here, I've just noticed, but Monty would also be an A tier. Blitz and Monty are both great operators now. Next up then, we have Brava, and Brava's an interesting one because it all depends on how the defenders are set up. If they have the right operators on their team that you can take full advantage of, like a Capcan and a Rooney Gate, you know, a bulletproof camera, Brava can easily be an A tier operator. But if they just switch to operators that you can't really utilize as much, then she drops down to probably a B tier operator. Don't get me wrong, you can still hack things like default cams, and that's very useful, but when compared to the likes of Twitch and stuff, I think they all belong in B tier. Each one of these operators uses their drone to either capture utility, destroy utility, or blow up utility, so it all really depends on what the actual thing is you're trying to destroy. Next up then, we have Buck, and Buck is my next S tier operator. He's always been one of my favorite attackers in the game, and in the current state, I'd argue he might be my favorite. I love the C8 SFWAR. Obviously, he's got the underslung shotgun as well that you can even use as a pretty good secondary shotgun option for close-up gunfights. And then on top of that, he also gets the hard breach device and has a decent pistol and stuff as well. So he's really, really well-rounded. No matter if you're solo queuing or in a good team, he is an S tier operator. Now after Buck, we now have Capital, an operator that I've never really got on too well with. I'm going to stick him probably towards the top end of B tier. If you know how to get the most out of his utility, then he can be one of the better operators in the game. But if you're someone like me and every time you use his gadget, you just can't seem to get any use out of it, he's not really that great, and you're probably better off running an operator who's in the A tier or S tier. Next up then, we have Deimos, another interesting one. Even though he's been out for a few seasons now, I still haven't played much of Deimos. He's never really fit my playstyle of, you know, tracking people down and basically putting yourself into a 1v1 situation. But I would also argue he's either top end of B tier or low end of A tier. I think it once again depends on who's playing him and what your kind of playstyle is. For me, I'm going to leave him top end of B tier. I kind of wish he had a better primary AR, and I think where I'm mainly a console player, using pistols is just not as good as being able to have a full auto option. Next up then, we have Dokkaebi, who's had a few tweaks this season. Obviously, Ubisoft have completely overhauled how her gadget works. She basically kind of just charges up her calls throughout the game now, instead of, you know, just having to off the rip. She also cannot call immediately, which is something that a lot of people actually did, but I actually think that helps her because it was kind of a waste of her utility. But I still think Dokkaebi is going to be an A tier operator. I mean, just her gadget alone, the way it just functions and you're able to locate people around the map, it's just great. I mean, she's always going to be a good operator in my opinion. The only downside is, once again, she doesn't really have a full auto good primary weapon to have. She only has, you know, her DMR. But with that being said, if you're comfortable with the DMR, this is arguably one of the better operators in the game. Next up then, we have Finka, and Finka's another interesting one because she used to be one of my favorite operators, and then in the last like 3 years of the game, I don't think I've played her like at all. I think she probably settles around the B tier here. All of these operators in B tier are not bad, by the way. They're all actually quite good operators, especially in the right hands, but it's just that you don't always get good use out of these operators. They're not good every single round. It kind of depends on the map and the setup and how you are approaching the attack. Now, with that being said, we now have Fuse, who, even though I'd like to put up here, probably does belong in the low end of B tier, if not the top end of C tier. I'm going to put him low end of B tier though, because if you use his gadget not to get kills, but to kind of push people out of key areas of the map, use his gadget to destroy other things, kind of like a Flores drone does, then you can actually clear a lot of utility off the bomb site. Sometimes you can pick up, as I said, those quick and easy kills with it, and because of that, I think he does deserve a B tier. An operator though that does not deserve B tier in my opinion is Glaz. Glaz is going into C tier because snipers in the game just don't really suit how the game is supposed to be played. Don't get me wrong, Glaz basically has a thermal DMR, but he is also technically a sniper. And don't get me wrong, I do like playing Glaz from time to time, but when it comes down to the actual operator, the gadget, and how much utility you're going to be bringing to the team, there's just so much better operator options than Glaz right now. And while we're on the topic of sniper operators, let's just rank Callie. I also think she's a C tier operator, but I think her gadget gives the team a little bit more utility, especially if the likes of Thatcher is banned. And now that we're talking about Thatcher, we might as well rank him as well. I also think Thatcher is probably an A tier operator. The fact that he always is able to counter essentially everyone in the game. I don't think there isn't a single defender that he doesn't counter unless they don't have a gadget to be countered. Let me know where you would put Thatcher. Does he deserve A tier, or is he more of a top of B tier operator? Or are you those few Thatcher mains that think he's an S tier? Let me know in the comments. After Thatcher then, we now have Gridlock, who throughout her entire existence in Rainbow Six Siege, she's always been one of the more underrated operators in the game. I think she deserves top end of B tier. I think she definitely settles in nicely around the operators like Deimos and Capital. I mean, if you're using her correctly and using her gadgets on site, it can really make it 10 times harder for the defenders to actually reclaim site. And if you do it once you've planted the bomb, you've essentially won the game. After Gridlock then, we have Grim, who once again, in the right hands, I know I keep saying this, but in the right hands, Grim could be an S tier operator. I'm not even joking. I know it's kind of a meme that Grim's terrible because for a long time he was a D tier operator, but he has settled in quite nicely, especially in higher ranks and Pro League. I know I've seen a lot of things in Pro League with him as well. I'd probably put him in between a top end of B and a low end of S, so I think a nice place for him to settle down at is an A tier. After that then, we now have Hibana, who I think is probably the worst out of all the hard breachers in the game, but even being the worst hard breacher in the game, you are still an A tier operator just because the ability of hard breaching is so goddamn crucial. And now that we've done all of this, let's just get the last two kind of hard breaches out of the way. I think Thermite is an S tier operator, makes the biggest holes out of all the hard breachers, but I think his loadout lets him down a little bit more when compared to the likes of Ace. I think his AR is obviously great, but not quite as good. He's more useful for external walls rather than Ace, who can do external and internal walls, so he's a little bit more versatile. And then finishing off the quote hard breacher category, we have Maverick, who's not really a hard breacher. I'd probably put him like in the middle of the pack. Like, he's useful for supporting a hard breacher, or he's useful for, you know, being in combination with like a Glaz and stuff like that. However, on his own, Maverick is not that great of an operator. However, he does have the M4, which is arguably the best AR in the game. After Maverick then, we have Iana, and Iana's always going to be a good operator just because of the way her gadget works. I'm going to put her above Dokkaebi. I think if this was a few seasons ago, it would probably be this way round, and now that I'm looking at it, how the hell is Blitz this high up? He needs to be low end of A tier. In fact, I'm going to put him top end of B tier. I'm going to just shuffle this around a little bit. He definitely does not deserve to be the second best operator in the A tier. But if we're organizing this across, I think this, maybe this, or even that, is probably the right organization of the A tier operators. Now with that being said, we're now going to move over to IQ. IQ is another operator that, even though she's been in the game for years, I've never really played, and I don't really like her play style, but I do know there is some use case for her. So for that reason, I'd compare her to like Capital, for example. Like, she does have her use case. If you're good with it and you have good communication skills with your teammates, she could be great, but on her own solo queuing, she's not really the greatest attacking operator. After that then we have Jackal, who probably just deserves A tier. I mean, there's a reason why he's always been near the top of the ban list for attackers, and that's just because he's a pain in the ass to deal with as a defender, because he can track you if you're roaming, he can give out callouts and stuff like that, and he just gives a lot of intel to the team. After Jackal then we have Lion, who for me either goes top end of B tier or low end of A tier. I think I'm going to leave him low end of A tier. He was also one of my favorite attackers over these last few years. I really love his AR. I think it's a very underrated weapon in the game. But once again, if you use Lion's gadget at the right times and pair it with your teammates with a coordinated push and stuff like that, you can really get a lot of use out of Lion's gadget, but it's kind of down to if you're able to use it to its full capability. After Lion, we now have Nook, who's the other operator who's getting some major changes this season. The way they are actually changing her is the fact that when you're in her sneak mode now, and you're just walking around, your durability of the gadget actually will not drain. The only time it drains is if you're shooting, if you're sprinting and stuff like that, and meanwhile you're invisible to the cameras at all times. Obviously you're going to get that little glitch effect when you're nearby, but other than that, you know, she's still very good, which I think takes her from a low end of C tier operator genuinely up to a B tier. The fact that you're able to keep it activated and still walk around the entirety of the map and not get detected is such a better system than the one we just had in place. It means you're going to be able to sneak around the map for longer, you know, stay incognito for longer as well, and then sneakily take people out, which is what she is designed to do. After Nook then we have Nomad, who in my opinion is just a top end of B tier operator, another operator that I have like barely any hours on, to be honest, and once again, the same AR as Deimos, so that could probably explain it. After Nomad though, we have Osa, who I did actually try and main for a little period of time, and I did actually have quite a lot of success, but she's just so easily countered. If someone just throws an impact grenade at you, throws a C4 at you, they're either going to deal a lot of damage or they're just going to kill you straight away. So you're very, very easily countered. Even if you play her perfectly, you can still just get countered by a good C4 throw. And for that reason, I'm going to leave her in the middle of B tier. Next up then we have Ram, who I think either deserves top end of B or low end of A tier. I think I'm going to leave her low end of A tier again. She's really good for vertical play on certain bomb sites and maps, and meanwhile she is opening the ceiling, she's able to keep her sights up and still watch her back, which the likes of, you know, Sledge and Buck are not able to do. When they're opening up the floor and looking down and stuff like that, they're leaving themselves vulnerable, which is one of the reasons why she is up this high, and the likes of Sledge I think is now a top end of B tier operator. Once again, I think Blitz is going to have to shuffle down a little bit. I think this way around might be the best way. Which leaves us then with these 5 operators here. Let's just quick fire them out of the way, starting off with Sense, who, let's just be honest, is a D tier operator. Until Ubisoft changed them a little bit, they're probably next in line for a major rework, or at least a massive buff. Obviously we now have Striker, I believe. I always get their names mixed up, but Striker, who is the attacking recruit now, and I'm gonna be honest, I think they have been quite underwhelming. I mean, I think the Defender Sentry is a lot better, but this version of recruit as well also gets the M4, and you can combine it with a few interesting little mechanics and stuff, but for the most part I think they are quite underwhelming. Ying, I think, deserves top end of A tier when played right. Obviously, you've got to be careful of blinding your own teammates, but other than that, great goddamn operator. Zero, I think, also deserves A tier. I'd probably go around here, especially if you know how to play him right and you have a coordinated team, which leaves us with Zofia, who I'm going to put at the top end of beat it. And that concludes today's video. Thank you for watching. Click the video on screen if you want to watch the Defender tier list where I rank the new operator Skopos. And until the next time, guys, I will see you then.